It was supposed to be a normal Sunday dinner. The kind where nobody talks about anything important, and everyone pretends the tension in the room is just from overcooked chicken. My parents had invited the whole family over. Me, my wife Sarah, our 2 kids, and my younger sister Emma with her husband. It was the first time in months we'd all been together, which should have been a red flag right there. Our family doesn't do reunions without reason. We were halfway through dessert when Mom set down her coffee cup a little too carefully. That's when I knew something was coming. She glanced at Dad, who gave her this tight nod like they'd rehearsed it. "We need to talk about something," Mom said, her voice measured. "Something important that stays in this room." I felt Sarah stiffen beside me. Emma leaned forward, curious but cautious. Dad cleared his throat. "It's about the house, your grandmother's estate. There's been a complication with the inheritance." I waited for more, but they just looked at each other again, like they were silently debating who had to say the next part. "What kind of complication?" I asked. Mom's smile was thin, forced. "Legal matters. Nothing you need to worry about. We just need everyone to agree not to discuss it outside the family. Not with friends, not online, nowhere." That's when my brother Marcus, who'd been quiet the whole meal, spoke up from across the table. "Why? What's actually going on?" Dad's jaw tightened. "It's sensitive, Marcus. We're handling it. We just need your word that this stays private." Something about the way he said it felt off. Too controlled. Too urgent. I glanced at Emma. She looked confused, maybe a little worried, but nodded slowly. "Okay, sure." Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, a silent warning. "Don't push it." But I've never been good at reading those signals. "I mean," I said carefully, "if it's just legal paperwork, why does it need to be a secret?" Mom's smile cracked just a little. "It's not a secret, sweetheart. It's just private family business." "Right," I said. Which is why I already mentioned it to Marcus and the kids. The room went silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence, the kind where everyone stops breathing at the same time. Mom's face drained of color. Dad's fork clattered onto his plate. Emma stared at me like I'd just confessed to murder. "You what?" Mom whispered. I blinked, suddenly aware that I'd said something very, very wrong. "I mean, you texted me about it last week. You said there was estate stuff to handle. I told Marcus when we grabbed coffee and the kids overheard us talking about Grandma's house, so I explained it was legal stuff." "That's it?" Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "You told Marcus?" "Yeah," I said, confused. "He's my brother. Why wouldn't I?" "What exactly did you tell him?" Mom interrupted, her voice sharp now. I looked around the table. Everyone was staring at me like I'd just pulled the pin on a grenade. "I told him what you told me," I said slowly. "That there was a delay with Grandma's will. Something about contested documents. That we'd have to wait a few more months before anything got settled." Mom put her hand over her mouth. Emma looked like she might cry. Dad turned to Mom. "He knows." "Knows what?" I demanded. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah stood, hand on my shoulder. "Maybe we should—" "No," I said, pulling away. "I'm not leaving until someone tells me what I just stepped into." Dad sat back down heavily, rubbing his face. When he looked up, his eyes were tired, maybe scared. "You weren't supposed to say anything because Marcus isn't supposed to know yet." "Know what?" Mom's voice was barely audible. "That he's not in the will." The words hung there, ugly and final. I stared at them. "What do you mean he's not in the will?" Emma spoke up, voice trembling. "Grandma left everything to you and me. Marcus was written out years ago." My stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because," Dad said quietly, "he did something she never forgave him for." I thought back to my coffee with Marcus 3 days ago. How relaxed he'd seemed. How he joked about finally getting enough inheritance money to fix his roof. He had no idea. And I just told him it was only a paperwork delay. "Oh God," I whispered. Mom stood abruptly. "We need to call him, now, before he finds out another way." But Dad shook his head. "It's too late for that." Emma's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, and her face went white. She turned the screen toward us. It was a text from Marcus. Why didn't anyone tell me? No one breathed for a full 5 seconds after Emma read Marcus's text aloud. Why didn't anyone tell me? It wasn't a question, not really. It was an accusation. Mom's hand trembled as she grabbed Emma's phone, fumbling like it was burning her. When did he send this? Emma's voice cracked. Just now. He must have seen something. Dad leaned in, staring at the screen, jaw so tight his teeth clicked. He's been watching the estate filings. I told you we should have sealed the record request. Stop it, Mom snapped. Arguing won't fix this. She started typing furiously, then froze, rereading whatever she was about to send. What do I even say to him? That it was a clerical error? Sarah touched her wrist gently. Maybe just tell the truth? Mom looked up, eyes flashing. You don't understand. That truth could destroy. But she never finished. Dad's phone buzzed next. He pulled it out, face draining of color. He's calling. Answer it, I said. He hesitated. If I do, there's no taking it back. Dad, I said, my voice rising. He's my brother. You can't just shut this out. He pressed accept. The line opened to silence except for the faint sound of breathing. Then Marcus's voice came through, strained, low. So it's true. Mom covered her mouth. Dad started softly. Marcus. Save it, Marcus cut in. I went online, found the probate record. My name's gone. You really think I wouldn't notice you listed his name? His tone sharpened. But not mine. He meant me. Marcus, Dad said again, more carefully now. Listen, there's context. You had 10 years to give me context, Marcus shouted. All this time you let me help with her medical bills, fix her damn house roof, clear her debts. For what? His voice cracked. So she could leave me out completely? Mom was crying now, quietly, hiding her face in her hands. Your grandmother made that choice, not us, Dad said, his own voice breaking. We didn't know how to tell you. We thought. Marcus laughed. But there was no humor in it, just that cold, hollow kind of shock. You thought what? That I just never notice? He paused, his tone colder when he spoke next. No wonder you said not to talk about it. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting you. Marcus, please, Mom whispered. You don't understand. She wasn't well when... Wasn't well? Marcus snapped. Or did one of you make her change it? The room went dead still. Dad slammed his palm on the table. Watch your mouth. Or what? Marcus hissed. You'll erase me again? The line crackled for a second. Then he said something I'll never forget. You should have left her alone the night she died. Mom's head shot up like she'd been slapped. Marcus, don't you dare imply that... But the line was already dead. Silence again, but sharper this time, heavy enough to feel alive. Mom turned to Dad slowly. Why would he say that? Dad looked like his blood had turned to ice. Because he knows something. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. Knows what? He didn't answer. Mom's eyes darted between us, her face pale and drawn. That night? You said she fell asleep peacefully. Dad didn't look at her. Emma whispered, Dad? He stood suddenly, pushing his chair back hard. Enough, he said quietly. This conversation ends now. But by then we'd already heard too much, just enough to realize there was something else to the story of Grandma's death. Something only Dad and Mom knew. And somehow, Marcus too. I looked at Emma's phone again, still glowing on the table. A new notification had appeared. A voice message from Marcus, time-stamped not even a minute after he hung up. I pressed play before anyone could stop me. The sound that came through made every hair on my neck stand up. Footsteps. Heavy breathing. Then Marcus's voice whispering, They didn't just change the will. They changed the story. Check the attic before they get there first. The message cut off abruptly with a metallic clatter, then a faint, muffled door slam. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Oh God! Dad was already reaching for his keys. Emma stared between them, panicked. Wait, where are you going? Dad's voice came low, curt, final. To make sure he doesn't find what's up there. They left in under a minute. Dad grabbed his keys, Mom threw on a coat, and the front door slammed so hard the silverware rattled. None of us said a word until the sound of their car backing down the driveway faded into the wet night air. Emma was the first to break the silence. They're going to Grandma's, aren't they? Sarah nodded slowly. That's what he meant by, before they get there first. The words had sunk into me like a hook. Check the attic. I'm going after them, I said, standing. You're not, Sarah shot back, eyes wide. I am, I said. They're hiding something. Something Marcus already found. He sounded terrified, Sarah. Claire, my mother, had always said the Pierce family didn't do fear, only denial. But this wasn't denial anymore. This was desperation. Emma grabbed my arm. I'm coming too. No, I said sharply. You stay with the kids. I'm not staying here after that message, she said, her voice breaking. You really think Mom or Dad are going to tell the truth if they find him first? That was what did it. The idea of them finding him first. We grabbed our jackets, keys, and my phone, which was trembling in my hand as I typed Marcus's number again. No answer, not even voicemail this time, just static. The drive to Grandma's old house took 20 minutes, but it felt like we were driving straight into the past. Fog hung over the streetlights like gauze. Every mile looked softer, older, haunted. The closer we got, the quieter the world seemed to become. It wasn't just night silence. It was the kind that feels deliberate. When the house came into view, something inside me twisted. The old white farmhouse sat at the edge of the woods, paint peeling, a single window still lit, the attic window. Mom's car was parked crooked at the end of the drive. The front door stood ajar. Emma swore under her breath. They're already inside. We climbed out, every sound sounding too loud, gravel crunching, footsteps heavy. Stay close, I said, though my voice was shaking too. Inside, the air smelled old. Stale dust, mothballs, and something faintly metallic, like rust. Mom's voice floated down the hall, firm, panicked. Michael, he's been here. We pressed closer to the front room doorway. Dad stood at the bottom of the attic ladder, flashlight trembling in his hand. The hatch was open, the rope ladder still swinging. He found it, Dad said. Mom's eyes widened. Then it's over. No, he said sharply. Not yet. I stared up the open hatch. The attic had terrified me when I was a kid. Always cold, always smelling of cedar, and something heavier that Grandma swore came from the old boards. Now it was silent again, except for a faint drip. Emma tugged my sleeve. We can't let them… Shh. We crept around the staircase, hearts hammering. Mom turned fast, like she felt us before seeing us. What are you doing here? Same thing you are, I said. Looking for Marcus. Dad's face went pale. You can't go up there. Why? Because it's dangerous, he hissed. He left something behind, something that shouldn't be opened. What did he find? I demanded. What's even up there? Mom started crying again, voice shaking. It's not about Marcus anymore. It's about what your father did. Dad's eyes flashed. Don't. Her voice rose. He deserves to know. You all do. Not like this, Dad snapped, then shot a look upward. There was fear in his eyes, not of us, but of something else. I stepped toward the ladder. Then I'll see for myself. He grabbed my wrist, grip firm and cold. Son, please, he said, almost begging. Don't go up there. You have no idea what's waiting for you. I stared back at him. Then tell me. And in that moment, I saw it. The tiny flick of his eyes toward Mom. The same look I saw when I was 12. When neighbors asked what happened to Grandma that night, she passed in her sleep. I pulled my hand free and climbed. Every rung creaked like a warning. At the top, the cold hit first, sharp and wet like rain that hadn't happened yet. Dust hung in the air and the room smelled faintly of earth and copper. There was a single trunk in the back corner. Not old, not antique, new. Steel latch, fingerprint lock, and beside it, Marcus's jacket. Marcus? I whispered. No answer, just that faint drip again. I turned my flashlight toward the far wall. There, half covered in dust, was something carved into the wood, letters scorched black into the beam. JK 2015 Grandma's initials. Beneath them, a single phrase scrawled in messy ink. Forgive what isn't buried. My chest tightened. Something small glinted near the trunk. A phone. Marcus's phone. Shattered, screen spiderwebbed, but still faintly lit. The camera app open. I crouched, picking it up. The last photo was a blur, half shadow and flash. But in the reflection of the phone's cracked glass, I could make out Dad's silhouette behind him. Son! Dad's voice from below, urgent, angry. "Get down here right now." But when I turned toward the hatch, it wasn't him I saw. It was a shadow moving across the beam of light from below. Slow, deliberate. "Dad?" I called. No answer. Then a faint voice, almost a whisper, drifted from the corner near the trunk. "Don't. Open it." I froze. The voice was Marcus's, weak, muffled, terrified. "Marcus?" Silence again. I knelt beside the trunk, hand trembling, and pressed my ear against the cold metal. For a moment, all I heard was the echo of my own heartbeat, until something inside knocked. 3 slow times. Mom screamed below. That's when the lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything, not the kind you get when the power flickers, but the full kind, thick, total, like the air itself turned into ink. I froze where I crouched, one hand on the cold trunk, the other bracing against the floorboards. The faint hum of the flashlight in my pocket was gone too. Dead battery, or maybe something worse. Below me I could still hear my parents shouting. Then the sounds of footsteps, one quick, one staggering. "Don't open it." That was Mom's voice, muffled but desperate. The trunk beneath my palm throbbed once, a dull vibration that pulsed through the floorboards. "Marcus," I whispered again, though I wasn't sure if I meant it as a call for help or a plea for something else. No answer, just that strange rhythmic tapping against the inside of the metal. I took a slow breath, forcing my shaking fingers to find my phone and swipe on the flashlight. Light flooded back in a dim cone, shimmering off dust motes. The attic looked empty at first. Dust dancing, bags of old clothes, boxes of forgotten things. Then, movement. Something shifted behind the trunk. A wet, almost dragging sound. All the air left my lungs. "Marcus!" I whispered again. "It's me." Silence. The flashlight trembled in my grasp. Then a low whisper floated out, so faint I thought it was the wind. "Don't remember her that way." I stepped forward, my knees threatening to give out. The flashlight beam swept across the far wall, landing on something that gleamed red-black in the dust. Streaks, small at first, then thicker, smeared in the shape of a handprint. And at the base of the trunk, poking out from beneath it, a single shoe. Dark leather. Familiar. Marcus's. I dropped to my knees and pushed at the trunk. It didn't move easily. When I finally managed to tilt it enough to see underneath, my breath caught. There was a cavity beneath the floorboards, a small square hole framed by rusted beams, the wood cut deliberately clean, like a hidden crawlspace Grandma never meant anyone to find. Inside it, something glimmered faintly. Not gold, not metal, something wet. The smell hit next, sharp, sweet, rotten. I gagged, hand covering my mouth. The flashlight flickered across the inside of the trunk again. And this time I saw what was in it. Not papers, not valuables, photographs, hundreds of them. All of Grandma. At first they looked innocent, her sitting in the garden, feeding the cat, reading on the porch. But as I flipped through them, the images began to change. Her eyes were closed in one. In the next, her head lolled slightly. Then her face, swollen, skin grayed. The last one stopped my breath entirely. It was a picture of her lying in her bed the night she died. Except her eyes weren't closed. And standing at the edge of the frame, half-shadowed but unmistakable, was Dad. I stumbled back, the whole attic spinning. The whispers started again, faint but circling now, like the air itself wanted to speak. They said it was peaceful. They said she didn't suffer. They lied. Something moved behind me. I spun, flashlight darting wildly. A figure stood near the ladder hatch. For a second I thought it was Mom. Then she stepped closer, and the light revealed her eyes, wide, vacant, brilliant under the reflection. "Put it back," she whispered. "Mom? I said put it back." Her voice cracked, breaking into something almost feral. "You don't understand. What's in that trunk doesn't belong to us." Below, I heard the front door slam. Then silence again. Dad was gone. "Where's Marcus?" I choked out. Her lips trembled. "He tried to show me." "Show you what?" "What your father did." The words barely left her before something hit the underside of the floor, hard enough that the boards jumped beneath my feet. Once, twice, then a scraping noise dragging away into the walls. Mom collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her hands. She told him where to find it." "Who?" I asked, stepping closer. "Grandma," she whispered. "Not in life, in the dream, after she died." My skin prickled. "You're not making sense." "She told him what your father buried for her. Not her memory, her guilt." What guilt? Mom looked straight at me then, her gaze hollow. Grandma killed someone. The room felt smaller instantly, the air heavier. What are you talking about? She confessed it to your father months before she died, Mom said, her voice trembling. Some man from town. She never gave his name. There was an accident. She said the police got the wrong person. That she'd been living with the guilt for years. Your father said he'd handle it before she passed. That he'd make sure no one ever found out. I stumbled back. So he changed the will. She nodded slowly. And when Marcus started digging through storage after the funeral, he found what your father hid. He found the proof. What proof? The record, she said weakly, raising a shaking hand toward the crawlspace. She kept the man's ID. She never gave it up. And when Marcus found it, he wanted to take it to the police. I stared at the open hatch in the floor. The dark hole. The faint light still glinting within. Miles Quinn, Mom whispered. That was his name. And I remembered then, years ago, the news reports. A man gone missing from our town. They ruled it accidental, said he drowned near the quarry. Grandma never talked about it. A slam downstairs snapped me out of it. Car doors, multiple, voices yelling. Flashlight beams swept through the broken windows. Emma's voice screaming, "Police! Anyone up there?" I turned to look out the attic window. Blue and red lights flashed across the yard. Mom, we have to go. She didn't move, just stared into the darkness where the trunk had been, whispering something over and over to herself. I leaned down and grabbed her arm. We have to go. But as I pulled her to her feet, something cold brushed the back of my neck. I froze. The air shimmered again. No sound, no motion, just pressure. Like the house itself was breathing. Then, faintly, the whisper returned. But this time it sounded like a man. Do not forget me. I turned. Marcus stood in the shadows behind the trunk, face half lit, eyes sunken. Marcus? I breathed. He didn't answer, didn't blink. Just watched me for one long second, before fading back into the dark like smoke dissolving in air. And when the flashlight steadied again, the corner was empty. Empty. Except for one new thing on the floor. A photograph. I picked it up slowly. It was Grandma with both my parents. And Marcus. The date printed on the bottom said July 17th, 2 days after her death. The attic was chaos by the time the police broke in. Flashlights sliced the dark, boots thundered up the steps, radios hissed. My mother was pulled back by one officer while I stood frozen beside the open trunk, the photograph of Grandma shaking in my hands. The air up there felt heavy, like every breath bled history. Sir, drop it, one of the officers ordered. It's just a picture, I said weakly. He stepped closer, frowned at the state of the attic. The trunk overturned, dirt and dust smeared on the boards, that strange cavity in the floor. What happened here? He asked. I opened my mouth, but every version of the truth sounded unbelievable. My father hid evidence, my brother found it, my grandmother killed someone, my father buried her guilt. Now the dead are whispering. Mom was sobbing in the corner. Another officer guided her downstairs, murmuring reassurances she didn't hear. Something shifted in my peripheral vision. For a heartbeat, I swore someone stood near the attic hatch again. Tall, still, just out of the light. I blinked. Gone. Then I heard it. Tapping. Slow, deliberate on the wall beam near the cavity. The nearest officer wheeled toward the sound. Did you hear? The wall groaned and cracked open an inch. Dust poured down in a gray cloud. The beam split just enough to reveal metal glinting inside. The officer crouched, shone his light, then muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." He reached into the gap and pulled out a rusted metal tin, sealed with tape that had long yellowed. "What's that?" I asked. He peeled the tape back carefully under the flashlight. Inside were a few damp photographs, brittle papers, and a thin leather wallet. He flipped open the wallet and his jaw tightened. "Jesus, this belongs to someone named Miles Quinn," I finished for him. The whole attic went still. He looked at me sharply. "How did you—" I just nodded at the trunk. "She kept it. My grandmother. She confessed years ago." The officer turned toward his radio. "We've got a possible cold case. Missing person, confirmed artifact match. Scene needs evidence control ASAP. For the next hour, the attic became an excavation site. They bagged everything, photos, trunk, the tin, and photographed the scene from every angle. I sat downstairs on the old couch, Mom next to me, staring at nothing. Her hands were clasped at her chest, trembling. "He said he'd fix it," she whispered. "Dad?" She nodded. "The night she died, he told me not to check on her. Said she was asleep. And when the morning came, he said we should let the paramedics handle it." Her gaze drifted toward the window where morning light was just creeping through torn curtains. I didn't question him. I didn't want to. But when Marcus started digging, a voice cut through from the hallway. "Detective Alvarez wants to speak with you, ma'am." Mom rose shakily, followed the uniformed officer into the next room. A few minutes later, Alvarez himself approached, calm, middle-aged, eyes too sharp to miss anything. He introduced himself softly, sat opposite me, and got straight to the point. "You were first up there when lights went out?" "Yeah." "Your brother's phone was recovered next to the trunk. Do you know where he is?" I shook my head. "No, I thought he was here before us." "We traced his phone signal, last ping from the property around 10:47 p.m. You arrived closer to 11? "Roughly." He studied me for a second, then said, "We'll need you to come in tomorrow for a full statement. Tonight we're just making sure everyone's safe." "Detective?" I hesitated. "I saw him." Alvarez tilted his head slightly. "You saw your brother?" "I think so." "You think?" "In the attic, after everything went dark. He said something. Don't remember her that way." Then he was gone. Alvarez didn't react right away. "Anyone else could have been in the attic?" Mom's muffled sobs echoed from the other room. "No," I said softly. "But maybe something else." He gave a small, worn smile, the kind that said, "I don't believe in ghosts, but I've seen stranger." "Let's stick with what we can prove, Mr. Pierce. We found trace residue and partial fingerprints on the tin, some old, some only hours fresh. We'll run them against state records." His radio crackled. He stood, answering briefly, then turned back to me. "They're taking your father into custody." My stomach dropped. "They found him." "Pulled over 4 miles out. Car in a ditch. He was headed toward the river, same direction as the Quinn disappearance logs show from '09. Alvarez paused. "He's not talking yet, but we found something interesting on his passenger seat." He reached into his pocket, set down a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a folded, water-stained piece of paper, torn from a photo album. It was the picture I'd found in the attic, the one with Grandma, my parents, and Marcus. The caption scrawled underneath in my father's messy hand. "Everyone gets a second chance." I couldn't look at it for long. Alvarez stood. "We'll keep you informed," he said, voice quiet. "But I'll give you one piece of advice, son. Family secrets don't end with confessions. They end when people stop protecting the wrong things." He left me there, the bagged photo glinting under the first hard edge of morning. By the time the sun rose fully, the house was surrounded by yellow tape. News vans had started idling near the gate, reporters whispering theories about the inheritance murder house. Emma arrived just as the police cleared the main floor. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Is it true?" she asked. "About Dad?" I could barely speak. "They think he helped cover up the Quinn death. Maybe even more than that." She stared past me toward the attic door, now sealed with a lock. "And Marcus?" I shook my head. "Still missing." Her eyes filled. "You know what kills me? Grandma's last letter said we were all her legacy. Every single one of us. I guess that included the lies too." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because something else was gnawing at the back of my mind, a thought I hadn't dared to say aloud. When I'd crouched beside the trunk hearing those 3 knocks, I'd felt something strange beneath my hand. The boards under the attic weren't just hollow. They were warm, and now, as the coroner's men carried evidence out one by one, I saw one of them pause by the doorway, frowning at the floorboards. He crouched, touched the wood with a gloved hand. "Sir?" Alvarez called. The man looked up, confused. "There's heat coming from underneath." But the power to the house had been cut hours ago. Alvarez's brow furrowed. "Seal the room, now!" Mom screamed in the kitchen, a plate shattering. The air in the whole house seemed to hold its breath. Because from upstairs, muffled but unmistakable, 3 knocks answered back. Slow and even. Tap, tap, tap. And this time I didn't think it was the past at all. It was something still alive in the walls, waiting for whoever dared to remember next. The first knock froze everyone in place. The second one silenced every radio. By the third, even the birds outside had gone still. Detective Alvarez was the first to move. He raised a hand toward the officers on the stairs, palm flat, eyes narrowing like he was listening to a voice none of us could hear. "Stay where you are," he said quietly. The air had gotten heavier since dawn, thicker, charged. You could feel it pressing against your lungs as if the whole house were breathing through you. Mom collapsed into one of the old dining chairs, hands covering her face. "It's her," she whispered. "It's your grandmother. She doesn't want us here." Alvarez shot me a look, not mocking, not skeptical, but uncertain. "Who exactly doesn't want you here, ma'am?" She lifted her head, eyes rimmed red. "The woman who built this house. The one he—" She pointed toward the window, the direction of my father's car being towed away. "Promised to protect." The floor above us groaned, a weight shifting across the ceiling. Boards creaked in long, steady lines, like footsteps pacing from wall to wall. An officer by the stairs muttered something about animals in the crawlspace. Another officer elbowed him to stay quiet. I couldn't make myself sit down. Every cell in me was screaming to leave, but curiosity kept me rooted. "Detective," I said quietly. "Before you got here, the floorboards upstairs, they were warm." He raised an eyebrow. "Warm?" "Alive," Mom said hoarsely. "They've always been alive." Alvarez didn't respond. He gestured toward the 2 forensics men nearby. "Reopen the attic, check the temperature source before anyone panics." When they moved the lock and climbed the ladder, I couldn't help following, keeping distance but watching every step. The attic light sputtered back to life in weak yellow pulses. The metal trunk was gone. The cavity in the floor was now half covered by an evidence mat. But something else had changed. The beams along the rafters, old cedar, cracked and dry, were damp. Dark patches spread along the grain like veins. One of the forensics guys crouched beside the cavity, waved his digital thermometer over the boards. 31 degrees Celsius. That's not residual heat, sir. That's active. Alvarez's face tightened. "Dig under it." They started prying floorboards loose, one by one. The wood peeled up with wet, sucking sounds, releasing the same copper-sweet stench I'd smelled earlier. Everything in me wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. The officer lifted the final board, and everyone stopped. There was no floor beneath, not anymore. Just dirt. Damp and black, pulsing faintly like it remembered movement. Embedded in the soil were old bones, human, unmistakable, tangled in roots that glowed faintly in the dark. Mom screamed. Alvarez steadied her, shouting for backup. Forensics shouting coordinates, radios flaring alive again. But over it all came a different sound. Whispers. Every single photograph nailed to the attic walls had shifted. Faces seemed turned toward us now, expressions warped by light. Grandma's eyes, in every photo, weren't closed anymore. I backed away, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. "Get out of the attic," Alvarez barked. The words barely hit before one of the officers slipped and fell hard, hitting the exposed ground. His flashlight clattered across the floor, rolling straight into the open soil. It stayed lit for a heartbeat, just long enough to show another hand buried just beneath the top layer. Fingers curled toward the surface. Alvarez yanked the man up, but the moment their boots hit the stairs, the flashlight flickered and died. That was when the house groaned. It wasn't the creak of wood settling. It was something deeper, like the foundation itself exhaled. Downstairs, the windows rattled. The kitchen door slammed, though no one was near it. Mom clutched my arm. "She's angry." "Mom, stop," I said, though my voice was shaking. "This isn't—" "Look at her work," she cried, pointing toward the ceiling. A spiderweb of cracks spread across the plaster, snaking from corner to corner like veins. The pattern wasn't random. It formed words. 4 of them. She wasn't alone. And that was when the realization hit me. Not like lightning, but like something slow and rotting. Grandma hadn't buried one body. She'd buried 2. By noon, the property had become a swarm of officials. Yellow tape, drones, floodlights cutting across the woods. The forensics team unearthed what they could. The bones belonged to Miles Quinn, confirmed by the remains of his wallet. Alongside him, smaller bones that no one could yet identify. When they told Alvarez they looked to be from a child, his face went gray. He found me by the porch steps, chain-smoking quietly. Something in his posture said he didn't know where to put what he'd just seen. "They think the kid's been there 60 years, he said. "Long before your father was even born." I ran a hand over my hair. "Then, means your grandmother had another secret," he finished. Silence stretched between us. Cicadas hummed from somewhere behind the trees. "She used to say she had a brother," I murmured. "But no one ever met him. Dad said he died young." Alvarez turned to face me. "Maybe not that young." He pulled something from his pocket, a small dirt-caked metal token bagged in plastic. "We found this next to the child's remains, engraved with a name, Jonah K. Same initials your grandmother carved upstairs." I stared at the bag. Jonah was her brother. "Not just brother," Alvarez said. "Half-brother." He hesitated. "And the DNA preliminary shows the child was yours in bloodline, as in direct ancestry. Family." The nausea hit all at once. "So, what was she hiding?" He searched my face for a long time before saying quietly, "Whatever your father was protecting wasn't just his mother's shame. It was the foundation of your entire family's story." Behind him, officers shouted something near the open field. Another freezer trunk had been found buried under the shed. I didn't want to know what was in it, but part of me already did. That night, after everyone left and the property sat sealed behind crime tape, I returned alone. I told myself it was because I needed closure. Truth is, I needed to see if the knocking would start again. The house was dark but quiet, hollow in a way it hadn't been since childhood. The air no longer hummed. I climbed the attic ladder one final time. The boards had been torn out, the hole filled with temporary lighting. The air was still faintly metallic, but the warmth was gone. In the empty space where the trunk once sat, something small glimmered under the light. A fragment of glass. I bent down. It was part of a photograph. Only a corner survived, showing Grandma's hand resting on someone's shoulder. A child's, cropped out by the tear. On the back, in faded pencil, she had written 3 words. "Family is choice." I sat there for a long time, staring at that phrase until morning light crept through the cracks. Downstairs, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just an audio file attached. I pressed play. First came static, then a faint breath. Then Marcus's voice, breaking, hoarse, whispered so close to the microphone it felt like it was right behind me. "They found her, but they didn't find me. Some secrets don't stay buried, brother. They listen." The line clicked dead, and from the ceiling above, faint but clear, came one last knock. Tap, 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 like a heartbeat, like memory itself refusing to die.